for being here.
No worries. Thanks for having me on the show. Big fan. Watched every episode so far.
I knew there was a reason I had you here.
Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe.
All that stuff, exactly, yeah.
That's the one, yeah.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode, well welcome to the very first episode actually of The Car Cranks. I'm Jay and he's...
Blair, nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Well, I don't know who it is.
Hi YouTuber. Yeah, well, topic of conversation for this show is why we like old cars. Why do we like old cars? Why do you like old cars?
Well, that's an easy one, Jay.
Yeah.
It's because I like unique things and I like tinkering, and modern cars these days are both expensive and hard to tinker with.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, well I imagine you're in the same boat as me, but there is just a large appeal to buying something old and pulling it apart and restoring it, putting it back together and going, I did that and now it works.
Making it work, yeah. Yeah, and I agree. I guess it's sort of the old, it depends on the kind of car really as well. Because there's a lot of these things you don't see on the road anymore, like, you know, I've been driving around in a car from 1978, that's my Scorpion actually. I'll flash a photo now, maybe, just in case you haven't seen it. And you just don't see them.
No, and you don't, and then I think that's you're almost doing a good job by keeping them restored on the road and just keeping it out there.
Yeah. Well, the whole reason I've got mine, well, today and yesterday, was on Sunday I went to a classic car meet and there was another one there, another Scorpion. It was a green one, it was gorgeous. It was manual. I would happily buy that one as well and just not touch it. It was that nice.
This
honestly.
is a slippery slope though.
It is.
This is the Starion thing all over again.
Let's not get started about Starions. Oh my god. That's a very, very, very bad topic of conversation. We're not going to go there.
This is like me and vintage Mercs.
Yes. What is it with you and your vintage Mercs?
I just think they're very timeless. And they're classics and you can get a lot of parts of them. And they're easily customizable. And
are they that easily customizable?
Okay, no, but you can still do some things with them. And one day when I've got one running and reliable, you'll see.
I'll see.
It's only been 4 years.
Yeah, but you start to put a too strict a timeline on yourself, and it just the timeline always gets blown out anyway.
Well, that's true.
Life gets in the way of these things. I must admit, of old Mercs, they're very distinctive. I mean, you know it's a Merc. You don't even if you have never seen an old Merc before, like you've only seen modern Mercs, you'll look at it and you'll say, oh, that's Mercedes, because it just has that look. The grille, obviously the badging helps as well, but they have that sort of distinctive style that sort of is very specific. I mean, a lot of car manufacturers like that. They have a generation where they've got a distinctive style that they're stuck with, and it's a theme, and it's the same theme along all of the models.
And the styling cues from those cars I saw on my E-Class I owned, I see in Mercs, you know, the new ones that like Luke drives around.
Oh yeah.
And then, but I always find, like the Lotus, when you think of the quintessential vintage sedan, you think of a Merc.
Yeah.
Like you think of the Lotus Esprit when you think the sideline of a classic sports car.
Yeah.
Well,
that wedge shape. Yeah, for sure.
And I think for me that's pretty. It's just a timeless look.
Yes, I think you're right. I mean, it is one of those things that I think it's an old car that's never really gone out of style.
No, not at all.
Because, you know, there's a lot of old cars, obviously. History is full of old cars because they're old now. They were once new, obviously, but they don't sort of have that same, I don't know, is pedigree the right word? Is it cachet? Is it reputation? Is it nostalgia, maybe?
I reckon it's reputation and nostalgia.
They are very over-engineered, though, old Mercs, aren't they?
We just look at the cars I've got are over 50 years old and mostly still good.
Yeah, that white one. I'll flash a photo up here. Blair picked up a white one on, what was it, Friday? I went and had a look. No, Thursday. It was Thursday.
Picked it up
Last Thursday. Anyway, the date's irrelevant because you could be watching this video at any time.
This is true.
But yeah, recently to this video, Blair picked up a white car. Is it 280 SE?
Yes.
It is, yeah, okay. So, nice looking car, had some restoration, but just a shell basically, isn't it? The interior's not even bolted in, is it?
It's mostly, it's all there, but yeah, you're right, not bolted in. The rear seats aren't even in properly, but someone's bolted the top in and left the bottom loose, and it's just, there's room for movement.
Either to move in them or remove them or...
Whatever, yeah, it's going to be a bit of work though. I've been costing up interior parts to be at least $1,000 to get it looking respectable.
But I think I sent you a photo from this car meet on Sunday.
Yeah.
Last Sunday. That purple one, the brand purple one.
That's the burgundy. I've seen that one.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I think the guy who owns it's a barber, and he's around Subiaco.
Nice.
Just based on where other people have spotted that car.
Well, it's a very stylish car. That's the thing, is that you look at it and you think, yep, someone with a bit of taste, a bit discerning, and who doesn't necessarily want to run with the pack. Because, I mean, you can go and buy a new Mercedes. You can go and buy a 10, 15-year-old Mercedes. Probably not the best idea, but...
done that. It was terrible.
Yeah. That's that dark period of Mercedes.
I didn't hate it, but at the same time it had dramas. And this is probably why people don't work them, just to fix the smallest thing.
Yeah.
Do you remember that side indicator, the side mirror on that E-Class I had?
Just the door mirror thing.
It was the indicator in the mirror.
Right, yep.
It got wet, got faulty, stopped working for about a couple of days. The cost of replacements, $400, one part.
For what? A light?
The relay, the LED relay in the mirror. And I thought, you know what? Just disconnect the other one. And then it came good, so thankfully I didn't have to do it.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's why people are scared to work on Mercs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose really as well, being in Australia, we have that thing where there's a lot less of everything. Like, you might get a lot of the same stuff, but, you know, for example, for anyone who might watch this in the USA, we don't have junkyards where old LS engines are just sitting. Normally they go like that. If a car is dismantled, wrecked, pulled apart or whatever, the engines usually go over in the corner and get advertised and sold fairly quickly, or they fetch a premium price because they're a rare thing. And, you know, old Mercs, it's the same sort of thing. There's that value in them where they just... Well, it's a lot of old cars, really.
Well, it's certainly a seller's market, especially since COVID came up. I mean, look at how much LSs have gone up in the last 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, God.
You used to be able to pick an LS1 up for $1,000.
Yeah.
Maybe $1,500 in good condition.
A fairly high K one, but yeah, I mean, it would
Yeah.
probably run and be alright.
Cool.
Probably need a little bit of a freshen up, but otherwise
That's
it'll be
not the worst
okay.
thing.
Yeah, exactly, of course.
And the one I saw the other day, which would have been a $1,000 engine last year, $2,800. And you think to yourself, there's no more engine, just forking out more cash, and now I've still got to pull it apart.
Yeah, but I mean, I suppose the other thing is these prices and everything like that. The LS is an old engine. Like LS1 is from 1996 or 7, I think it was. So it was the third generation of those Chevrolet engines. The first of the that wasn't the first of the 5.7s, but it was the first of the alloy blocks. I think someone's going to correct me because I'm not a big LS aficionado.
Neither.
I like them, but
Just no, they're cheap power.
yeah, I mean, we only had one car that came in here, and that was the range of Commodores at the time. They weren't in Corvettes or Camaros or any of that other stuff.
Trucks or anything, no.
No.
So that's why it's the seller's market.
Yeah.
If they didn't come out of Commodores, they were imported. And
Yeah.
then you pay a premium on shipping and containering.
Because we maybe had a quarter of all the LS engines that have ever been made.
Really?
Here. I think so, yeah.
There's still a few LS engines though.
Yeah, but I mean, what I mean is a quarter of, the model lineage. Like, for example, you know, there's LS1, LS2, LS3, LS7, L98, LSA, all that sort of stuff. But in the US, they've got like LS4s and all this sort of stuff, which have iron blocks. They came in trucks or vans or something. We didn't get any of those. Well, LT1 is C4 Corvette, so mid-80s. That's also a 5.7, but that's like the newer 350 Chev from memory. So, because 5.7 litres is 350 basically, cubic inch. So, but yeah, we didn't get any of that stuff. And you know, Corvettes weren't sold here new. All of the Corvettes in this country were imported either by a company or privately or something like that. So the only things that we had that had LSs in them were Commodores or some sort of variation of Commodore.
I can't think of anything else. Honestly.
No. I don't think there is anything else. I
No,
mean, there's
it's just
the Utes.
still Commodores.
Exactly, it's based on Commodore. So the Utes, the sedans, the wagons, and the coupes, the Monaros, which in the US were Pontiac GTOs. But yeah, that was pretty much it. But what is an old car? I mean, what would you consider to be an old car? Would you consider a 90s car to be an old car?
Well, these days?
Yeah.
I don't know. Because I mean, I look at your MR2, I look at my S14, I wouldn't consider them old cars, but that's my perspective.
Yeah.
Someone else might. I would say maybe my 60 series is an old car.
Yeah, I think maybe 80s or older is an old car.
So let's give it a 30-year threshold.
Okay.
Anything 30 years old, what would you say?
Yeah, I reckon that's probably about right.
So that'd be 91.
Yeah, okay, 91. Well, I would say 80s.
Yeah.
80s and older is an old car. Because 90s is still that sweet spot where there's a lot of modern reliability that still exists that's built into 90s cars. Like it's had a bit of a freshen up.
Yeah.
Microprocessors are faster, etc., etc., etc. But, you know, if you were to say to someone that you wanted a cheap, reliable car, it would be Japanese and it would be 90s.
Yeah, which was the absolute golden era of Japs cars, and you can't convince me otherwise.
Probably my favourite decade.
I think from any decade, Japanese cars. I mean, in the 70s they had a few gems.
Yeah.
80s was interesting. They're coming into their own now, but the 90s, holy shit. Sorry.
The rust takes the 70s cars, I think.
Yeah, and unless you're dedicated with your Datsuns, and you're right, they just disintegrate.
Because we know a few people with some older, I mean, even my 70s Japanese car, which was technically built in Australia under license by Chrysler Mitsubishi at the time of takeover, it's just a bit of a hodgepodge. We might get into more of that in another show, but yeah, it's just one of those things where they sort of, that rust proofing thing, and it was all 70s cars, and every single 70s car I've had has had rust of some description somewhere, and it's a common thing for that car.
It was probably the manufacturing as well as the metallurgy that we use. So I mean, the alloys and things just weren't invented or widely used yet.
Yep.
I mean, my 60s Mercs, they're all, if they were to left their own devices, would slowly disintegrate into the ground.
Yeah.
And you just have to look at the doors and cards and stuff I'm pulling off. They're all very thin in the...
Is it the rust? Is it sort of on the bottom of the doors? Is it where they all rust?
It's definitely a maintenance thing.
Yeah.
So I think if people had kept the water channels and things clear, and the holes open, the water probably wouldn't have pooled and caused as much damage as I'm seeing.
That's that maintenance thing, isn't it? You're
it just
right.
comes back to maintenance.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those cars were sold to people who just didn't really care for it. I thought, look at my big Luxo bar.
But fair enough. I mean, the sort of people who are buying these really expensive cars were having someone else maintain it.
Yep.
So they weren't working on their own cars. They were buying them, they were driving them, or being driven in them, let's face it. And then they would take it to their garage and, here, fix that please, thank you very much.
It just happened.
Yeah.
And you walk out and you're out of your penthouse and you're like, oh, my Mercedes is ready. And then they get sold and eventually they're worth nothing to someone.
Yeah. And now everything's going back up again, and
yeah.
I miss old cheap cars.
Me too. I miss the days when you could get something cheap.
Yeah.
90s, 80s, $500 cheaper. Out to the Nangara Pines and
just have a good time.
Just give it the old Viking burial. Yeah.
And now you look at those same cars that we bought. I mean, even 5 years ago, they were $500, $1,000 or whatever. Now they're $5,000.
Yeah, and you can't tell me that's inflation or just inflation.
I guess they're getting rarer. I mean, if we're talking about, we'll go back to, let's say, oldish cars. We talk about, a prime example is the S13.
That's a good one.
Now, I mean,
we've all owned S13s.
Well, I haven't.
Oh.
I haven't. But I have driven one in anger on a track a lot, and they are a fantastic car. But because there were so many of them brought here, they the market got a bit saturated. They got very undervalued. People turned them into drift cars, as you know, and then they were worth nothing. And now, all of a sudden, everyone thinks that their S13 that's a bit is $15,000. And
$800 rolling shells are now $4,000 rolling shells. Yeah. And they're still not worth anything.
No.
You still have to put all the work in, and they're probably bent, and they're probably, if you put them on the frame, they would be not quite there.
By that estimation, our absolutely banana bent race car should be worth $5,000. It's not.
It's going to be in it.
Way is it
it's
worth
definitely worth $5,000. No, but in this current climate, it is worth $5,000.
Maybe complete with the engine and everything like that, yes. You'd get away with it, but...
Isn't that the one, though, that had the roof cut off? And then welded back on? Maybe 4,000.
It's what's the old racing analogy? Far from good, but good from far, but far from good.
Yeah.
That car, honestly, and it would, because I didn't really do much work on it, but every time I saw it, you sort of look at it and you think, oh yeah, that looks really cool. And then you get up close, and like all the panels are like this, just rippled and stuff, and there's bog. In fact, I remember one of our friends telling me that they were hitting a panel straight and bog fell out of it. So
Well, that really doesn't surprise me about that car.
No.
That's very common.
Yeah.
But you compare that car to say to our other friend's two-tone S13, the brown one with the CA.
Oh yeah.
And now that's a classy S13. I think that'd be worth at least 20,000 these days.
Yeah. Well.
And I think it was purchased for 12.
Yeah. That was at the expensive end of the market for that car at that time. But now
Totally worth
it's
it.
probably a 25 grand car.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm kicking myself for selling my S15.
Well,
But at the time,
this is the thing though. You don't know. And I mean, I have never had a car that's particularly gone up in value at the time. But probably the car that I would have liked to have maybe hung on to and kept for dollar value's sake would have been that 260Z that I had.
I really liked that car. But if I remember you saying it wasn't worth, at the time, wasn't worth fixing.
Now it is, absolutely.
Yeah, and I really liked your Crown. I liked all your old cars. But
If I find some photos, I'll flash some photos up.
Please do.
And of the Crown and the 260Z. And
you know, let's chuck some Sylvias in. I think we've all owned enough Sylvias that we can throw some photos. We'll do a montage.
yeah.
If we can find photos. On this topic though, and this is something I was thinking about yesterday, talking to a mate. What kind of cars are out there now that might be future classics? Because we've got all your Sylvias have gone through. They've done their dash. The price is I think we're nearly peak Sylvia. Like my S14 is nearly worth 40k, and I think that's stupid. But I will sell it for that much. But then I'm looking at the market and going, what out there is being sold right now? Future classics.
That's a hard one.
I think if I had a crystal ball, it would be
Yeah.
definitely worth looking into.
Future classic. I mean, there's a lot of cars that have been sort of steadily increasing in value. Classic status though is a hard one because a lot of it would have to depend on how rare it was maybe, or how good it was, or something like that. Because there's a few obvious answers like, we could look at say things like S13, S14, S15, Sylvia / 200SXs or whatever, 240SXs for those of you in the USA or North America. And those cars, yes, but they've started their climb and they're an obvious answer.
Yeah, well, let's say they've already hit that status. I'm thinking, what's sold today that in 20 years' time will be sought after?
Yeah.
Even cars that are. I mean, I'm thinking 350Zs potentially.
Yeah, 350Z.
The
Okay.
old 370.
370. Yeah, I'll give you that for sure.
I'm excited for the 400, or they're just the Z. They're calling it.
I don't know.
No, doesn't tickle your pickle.
Not especially.
No, fair. Okay.
I mean, it might look a bit different in the metal when I see it in front of me or something like that. But at the moment,
Well, at the end of the day, it's just a 370 with new ends and a different interior.
Yeah, okay.
I saw some photos of the overload side views, and they're just the same apart from the end.
Have they cheaped out, do you think?
No, well, I think it's a very smart move on Nissan because from the looks department, from my point of view and a few others, they've nailed it.
Yeah. Okay.
So they've got a car that's desirable. They put the right engine into it. I think they've got 3-litre twin turbo.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
it'll be making more horsepower than 370 ever did from factory, and it'll be tunable.
Conservative horsepower though.
Exactly.
It's not like 600 horsepower.
No, but there's potential
Yeah.
for 600 horsepower.
Yeah.
Now, future classic wise, I'm thinking the BMW that's got the Supra engine. The
Supra.
BMW that shares the same engine as the Toyota Supra.
So Z4.
Is that what they're calling it?
Well, is it not a
I
Z4?
don't know. I'm not.
There's an
BMW
argument.
guy.
Don't flame us.
Sorry.
It's just one of those things that
We'll
people
fact
have
check
gotten
and
into,
we'll get back to you. Now that I've heard, with an injector upgrade and a tune, 700 horsepower. Now that to me says future classic.
Yeah, okay. I would go with that. The only thing maybe I would say there is that is the power the thing that makes it a classic, or is it just the car?
Well, if it has a good handling chassis as well,
Yeah.
then I'd say the engine at least is sought after.
I think in standard form they'd be worth more
Not
than
tuned.
played with, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, you look at the pristine stuff from the 70s and 80s where it's completely standard, and then, look at the prices that they fetch. Like, for example, what was it? Something ridiculous in the US, I think it was a couple of years ago, where the Toyota 2000 GT There was a standard one of those that got sold. It was over $1 million US. It was standard, that completely standard. All numbers matching, standard wheels. I think it came with the original tyres, but it wasn't on the original tyres because that would be, quite frankly, quite dangerous to drive. No, thank you. And that car was, I think it was like 1.3 million or something like that.
Yeah, but the uniqueness of that car is in its standard.
Yes, so instant obvious classic.
Yep.
But okay, getting back to your topic then, I think I would have to say the recent Alpine A110.
Alpine or Alpine?
Alpine.
However you want to say it. Yeah,
Alpine,
another one. You got one of those kept fully factory.
About it. Yeah.
In a sea container, locked it away.
Yeah, I think that.
You're right.
I mean, that is a tribute car to a car that existed in the 70s, 60s, 70s. But by the same token, if you were to say, quote, some more famous motoring journalists like James May, for example, he thinks it's brilliant. He owns one. And almost everybody who's driven one has praised it unanimously, just saying how good it is and how yes, it's a tribute, but it's a modern car and it's easy to drive and it's very, very good and it handles well and it's just fast enough.
I think on that note then, maybe the C-Class Bike Edition.
Yeah.
They're a few years old now, but I reckon they'll be going up, not down in price.
Well, they'll probably depreciate a little bit and then come back up again, don't you think?
I did see one the other day for 150,000 though, so...
What are they new?
I couldn't tell you, but that looks like the price is going up.
Right.
Same as Luke's 263, that's going up.
Okay.
That shape, the 2010.
Yeah.
That's, I think that's...
a classic? Future classic?
Future classic.
Mm.
How about the Toyota 86?
Now, see, I was just about to bring that up. The whole GT86 BRZ thing. Do you think future classic?
Or what do they call them, a Scion in America?
Scion, I think, is finished.
Really?
Yeah, I think they closed it.
Oh, okay.
It was the FRS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't know. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much discontinued the Scion badge now.
Would
Feel
that
free
make
to correct us, but yeah.
Would that make it more desirable then?
Maybe, with Scion badges on it.
Like,
I mean,
it's the Scion that came out for like 2 years before they realised it was no good. But that makes it better somehow.
Maybe.
Who knows?
I don't know. Yeah, it's one of those things, I guess, that only time will tell.
Yeah.
Only time will tell. So, I don't know. Would you make the argument that the GT86 could be a future classic?
Well, if you look at the S13, sold in bulk volume.
Yep.
It was a good chassis. Some of the engines not so great, but they got switched out, made to go fast.
Yep.
The 86 could be in a similar vein.
Yeah, I think
the engines get pulled out.
Well,
they could be.
Well, I think I remember seeing something absolutely preposterous when the car was not long out. Someone stuck a 2JZ in it, and they had to, elongate the front to accommodate the engine and stuff because it's, obviously not long enough. And then the track was different and stuff. And actually, what was the? Oh, that's right. There's a YouTube car floating around. Well, it's not a YouTube car, but it's a car that was featured on YouTube quite heavily, where someone had bought a. Was it a Ferrari? Was it a 456 or a 458? I have to check actually.
I don't recall, but I know the car you're talking about.
It's Ferrari powered.
And there's that video of it drifting around the mountain pass and looked very hard to drive.
Yeah.
It looked like it was a little bit too much of everything.
4586 or something like that, I think it was. Anyway,
I've seen LS swapped ones.
Yeah.
I think there's at least 2 in Perth that are LS swapped that I can think of.
Really?
Yep.
Race cars?
I think one's streamable. I know there was one for sale recently for 40,000 with an LS. And as to whether it was engineered or not, don't quote me, but it didn't look like it'd be too hard to get it up.
It's 40 grand. Well, but this is the big thing, isn't it? Like in this country, you have to have it so that if you're putting in an engine in a car, it needs to be a newer engine than the car. So you couldn't put an LS1 in it because it's too old.
Correct. Unless you're planning on just tracking it, then you
do. Yeah, you do whatever you want, then it doesn't matter. I mean, we put an RB25, naturally aspirated RB25 into an S13.
Yeah,
so,
I love that.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great car. I think the GT86, yes. Perhaps not like, really particularly exploding as a classic.
No, think about it. The 80s S13s didn't really explode as classics until around 2010.
Yeah.
So there was a 30-year period before they became...
Do you think it'll take 30 years? Maybe
Sorry?
not in my lifetime.
Well, when did the 86 first come out? It was 10 years ago, right?
2011 or 2012, I
There
think.
you go, about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Give it, I reckon, forecast 10 years in the future, maybe 15 years, I reckon they'll start to be sought after. Unless they bring more interesting cars to the market that are very similar.
Well, the newer version has a bigger engine and more torque
Yep.
and more power.
Yep.
And is a bit more drivable. It's a 2.4 litre engine versus a 2 litre. So will that be better? Apparently in every conceivable way, because we haven't got them here in Australia yet, but I think in the USA they've got them, and in parts of Europe they've got them. Apparently it's better in every conceivable way.
Really? Well, I mean, hopefully.
That engine in the old car.
I mean, if it's an easy swap, that'll start becoming a common thing as people crash them. It's the way people do things. People are
Well, yeah, exactly.
and talking about crashing, Mustangs.
Oh, yeah, no, we're going to talk about.
We're not talking about that, but modern Mustangs, I mean, future classics, do they have the same, like, joie de vivre as the old 60s ones? Or are they just...
Do you know, it's weird because I see a lot of Mustangs around just driving in my area and stuff like that where I live, and it's sort of a bit but
You do live in a bougie neighbourhood, though.
don't start that. Don't start that. Hey, you'll want to talk. Oh. No, actually, yeah, hi, come on. Anyway,
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
I do rather like the limited edition Bullet Mustang.
Yeah.
The green with the blacked out and everything. Oh, that's good.
And maybe these are the ones that we're going to be seeing hitting millions of
That
auctions.
that I think is a classic. That is a future classic for sure.
I think I've seen them on the streets.
Yeah, there's a couple that sort of I see fairly regularly driving through adjacent suburbs and stuff like that, industrial areas and stuff. So not late at night or anything like that. No.
Sure.
No.
When you go out to certain car parks looking for certain people, eh?
Yeah. No. Yes, I mean no.
We're not talking about that.
No.
Sorry guys, it's a PG
that's,
podcast.
That's a topic for another conversation entirely. Yeah, I think one of those or limited edition things. So the Bullet Mustang for sure, maybe like the Shelby GT350s and stuff like that. But the price premium from new is quite a bit over the standard car, even in this country. I mean,
Yeah, I think especially in this country. I think in America it's a lot cheaper anyway.
especially is right. Yeah, the price of things here is, we don't. There's not 1,000 Lamborghinis going to a car meet or anything like that, like Los Angeles.
And we just don't have that buying power because we don't have enough people who would be in a state to import or buy one. And
No.
I think just even importing them is just quite expensive in compliance and converting
Yep.
left hand, right hand. I mean, I was watching a YouTube the other day and the guys picked up a wrecked Lamborghini and rebuilt it. And you're like, that would never happen here.
No. It
Because
would never happen.
the
here.
owner would have the car rebuilt, or they would do the best they could to fix it because it's just not financially. I mean, it'd be financially viable to do it here. It may not be so much in America.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because of the scarcity, I guess. The other thing, of course, is that if it costs a fortune here, and then you wanted to try and offload it without finishing it, what would you realistically get for it? Because you'd have to sell it somewhere overseas, where there's more of them, more available. You might not get your money back.
And where would you sell it? It'd have to be a right-hand drive country, and they're probably cheaper in the UK. Maybe Singapore.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that you'd get it in Singapore. Their motoring restrictions are very tight.
So if it's been repaired, they wouldn't want it. No. Well then,
Well, I don't think you can even import old cars into Singapore.
surely.
I don't think so.
Oh,
Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure.
just double check that.
Well, yeah, exactly. But from what I was reading about how Singapore operates, the cost of new cars is really expensive.
Yeah, it's the tax.
Just like we're talking about things like $80,000 Honda Civics and stuff like that. It's like, whoa, that
And then
is
I think even the cost to get your driver's license over there is quite expensive.
Yeah. But the trade-off is it's a beautiful country and it's clean and it's safe and it's quiet and it's nice.
And there's less steroids than Australia.
Yeah, that's right. There's no Bergens. Hello, Bergens.
G'day, boys.
Yeah, I guess those things. Getting back to the Mustangs and limited edition cars, like maybe the premium versions of things like Chevy Camaros.
Yeah,
Things like Dodge Hellcats, some sort of Challenger or Charger or something like that. Limited edition ones, not the regular ones.
I think for reference, those Chevy Camaros are at least 130,000 here, complied and sold brand new. So compared to what the 40 or 60k they are in America.
Yeah, exactly. Like for the fully loaded one,
Yeah.
they're like 50, they're 60 grand or something like that.
Yeah.
Here they're like more than double.
You look at the conversion rate, US to Australian, it doesn't stack up.
No, and it's still way more money. I'm just trying to think what else would actually be a future classic.
How about HSVs?
I think actually, that you bring up a good point there. Definitely, any manual V8 Holden.
Yep. And any manual straight 6 barrel turbo Falcon.
Ford stuff. Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah.
FPV, HSV.
Yep. Because they no longer exist in this country, because there will never be any new ones of those. I think you're probably right. Yeah.
But it's interesting because for a while those panda-faced Ford Falcons, first one comes to mind.
Panda face ones?
They had the weird body bumper, the FPV ones. I used to call them panda face. I saw a white one with black and I thought, that's a panda. They used to be absolutely everywhere.
Okay.
We'll put a photo up.
Sure. If we can find one, I don't know what I was talking about.
I'll
Anyway,
absolutely just show you after. I'll show you now actually. You saw them absolutely everywhere, and I haven't seen one for probably at least 2 years now. I think about it. Panda face.
Are we like an AU or
No. We're talking newer than that.
BA, BF?
No, these ones here.
Panda face?
What would you call it? Imagine that in white with the panda.
Okay.
No.
I can kind of see it.
I might have been a bit drunk when I first saw it. I'm not going to go into that. But I mean, I don't think anything like that. I haven't seen one of those in yonks. But
That's GTP, so that's limited production stuff.
yeah,
That's a Falcon GT, but is the higher spec again, isn't it?
yes, that's
Right.
top of the range FPV.
That's V8.
Yep, and I vividly recall when I was living in Kalgoorlie, walking past the Ford dealerships, and they were just, 10 abreast at the front, and then
Of those?
yeah, those.
Wow.
And I thought that's pretty cool. And they're the last of the Ford Falcons. Everyone lost their minds, and I haven't seen one at least 2 years now. I think about it.
Because when did Ford close here? Was it 2016?
We'd have to double check that.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
But I think it was a good 5 years ago from memory.
I
And
was definitely in Kalgoorlie at the time,
there you go.
so around 2016.
I think it was a good 5 years ago, and it sort of was one of those things where you saw a decline in. I mean, you really don't even see Falcons on the road much anymore.
No, you're right. But then where have they gone? Are they all broken? Or if they are all hidden up in garages? Are they now
Junked.
Sunday drivers?
Junked,
Junked?
I reckon.
But they don't rust out though.
No, but have you ever owned one?
No.
Okay. I haven't either, but one of my friends, and I was interesting because I chronicled the journey of his new XR6 Turbo,
Okay.
manual, bright green citric acid color or whatever.
Yep, okay.
Well, as you do.
Yeah,
It was
as
the
you
mid 2000s or whatever.
It's
And
the way things were done at the time.
I chronicled how this car fell apart over the years that he owned it, and the interior trim is not great.
No, but I knew that already. Awful.
Yeah,
You
it
get in
all
a
just
taxi
falls apart,
and they just...
and the seats start to wobble, and the steering wheel, the top of it becomes loose from wear and stuff like that, and
Which really is a shame because the engines are rock solid.
Yep.
And they had a good drivetrain, and I think they even handled relatively well.
I don't think anyone else got the Barra, did they?
It was a very Australian engine.
They were made here, yeah.
And
That's
then now
right.
they're exporting them to the US. I've seen a few US cars drive around the Barras.
They are massive engines though. For a 4 litre, it's so big.
Big, tall, heavy.
Straight 6.
There's one in the Sylvia I know of around Perth, and it
Oh yeah.
doesn't
Okay.
sit right.
Yep. No. Well,
The sub's nearly off the ground and it's almost touching the bonnet, and it's just too big for the car, but it works.
you'd have to have a bigger bonnet with a big hump in it or something like that, and then you wouldn't be able to see where you're going. So, yeah.
But anyway, so you chronicled the decline.
Oh yeah, this thing just every time I get in this car, over the course of 3 years, there'd be something else broken or something missing, or whatever, and it's like, really? And
Did he look after the car?
yeah, like he was pretty fastidious. He used to wash it sort of you know, every weekend, every second weekend or whatever. He loved this car. He bought it new. It was his first new car. I think it was his last new car. And it was right at the start of the XR6 turbos. So it was like a BA.
I know the one that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And they came out in stupid colours.
Yes.
But the HSVs came out in stupid colours at the
Yes.
same time, and it was just the dumb thing.
Well, it was that period where they were trying to relive, I think, the 1970s with all these bright pastel and ugly cars.
I think it was done well in the 70s. It wasn't done well when they came out.
I think it was all right the first time, but the second time, no.
And all the Utes had spoilers on the lids, and it really just...
Got to have that downforce.
It was interesting.
Got to have that.
I don't hate it. Now I think back on it, I don't hate it.
But see, and here's the thing, right? We look back and we think, but will they become collector's items?
I think so. I think he had a very clean one of those in one of the brightest colour you can think of.
Standard.
Or with a tune, but not too many bolt-on parts.
Yeah. I think as close to standard as possible, it would be something that's worth it.
Sorry.
It's all right.
I think you're right. I mean, yeah, if you get just a clean mold after LS, what were they? LS, were they L98s? No, it was before the L98.
What are we talking about now?
The, let's say the VZ SS.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. All the Utes and stuff. Yes.
Yeah, one of those.
So,
one of the other ones.
First of the 5.7 LSs was in the VT, which is 97, I think it was. There were, I think, some VT 5 litres as well, but they were sort of more rare. It was sort of the changeover where they were using up all the old Holden 5 litres and moving to the the LS1s.
And I think they went to LS2 as well.
Yes,
they were
6 litres, yes.
That was around that time.
Well, I think, yeah, some of the HSVs were LS2s, but I don't think the regular Commodores were LS2s.
Next time we do this, we need to the laptop. I'm just going to fact check like it. Because I feel like we're saying some wrong things here.
Yeah, apologies. This was supposed to be informative. It probably hasn't been very informative. At least you've been entertained, I don't know.
We've talked a lot of shit.
We have.
And classic cars are definitely the way to go.
Yeah, well...
But I still wouldn't own an 86. But would you?
You wouldn't?
No.
Then that brings up a very good point. It's something that I'll bring up now. We won't leave it for a future episode because we can always revisit this. But if you were to buy, you had to go and buy right now a brand new sports car. You couldn't spend $100,000. It had to be around, say, $50,000-ish, $50,000. What would you buy?
That's very easy.
Go on then.
GR Yaris.
Are they like 54 new or something like
About that. And we get a 3-banger, all drive, light little rally car, almost a rally out of factory.
Okay.
And then there was that one I saw the other day. They tuned it was about 600 horsepower. And that's insane. As to how the longevity of that engine, I'm curious, but
well, it's Toyota though.
I wouldn't imagine they'd tuned it to Pinker's power.
No.
So maybe you could have one running 400 horsepower, and that's still absolutely spastic for a small car like that. And that's what I'd get.
Okay.
What would you get?
Well, here's the thing. I'm of the school where you don't have to have a huge amount of power to have fun in a car. Because having not had a particularly fast car ever, I've sort of made do with, sort of mid-range power. Like this thing behind me here has only got 250 rear-wheel horsepower.
Yeah, but
so it's not fast. It's quick, but it's not fast.
It's quick around corners.
It is quick around corners, and when I'm chasing down 600 horsepower Toyota Supras on a racetrack, and they're getting in my way, not because I'm a brilliant driver, it's just because perhaps they can't drive their car, or their car is too powerful to enjoy, or they're scared.
Well, my 14 Ram Barbagallo is a great example of that. 430 horsepower at the rear. And yet, hard to use on the track because you put your foot down and it just does these ones.
And that's the whole power
I think that's more driver, but
well,
I just need more seat time. But if I was to say drive something like that and it's chuckable and you're not too scared to put your foot to the floor, might have more fun.
Yeah. And that's my argument, is that I wouldn't go for something that was particularly hugely horsepower, like had a particularly high horsepower, just because it ends up being one of those things where you're driving and you can't use it on the road.
No, and you definitely can't. I mean, unless you...
But if you've got something that's perhaps not as powerful, when you put your foot down, you'll go quicker and you can use more of it on the road. So you're, instead of using 40% of the power from your 600 horsepower car in something that has 200 horsepower, 250 horsepower, you're using 70% of it because you are, you know, traffic light Grand Prix or whatever, and just, you know, yeah.
The
Anyway.
old traffic light heroes, eh?
Yeah, that's the one,
I
exactly.
never pegged you for one, but okay. Whatever works.
I don't really have any of those sorts of cars. Well, this may be when I drive it, but it's not often that these days. No, I actually do rather like the GT86 or the 86.
You don't mind?
I like it.
What would you do to it though? Like, you can't just drive around the factory.
I think the first thing I'd do would be buy a set of wheels for it, because I don't like the standard wheels at all. So I mean, that's to be expected because they're just plain old factory standard wheels, and they are like the early ones.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, factory bog standard, boring as hell S14 rims are now. Are very expensive.
Yeah, well there you go.
So if you buy some more, save the other ones.
Yeah, maybe we'll turn them into a coffee table or something.
Set fire.
Yeah.
Increase the value of the others.
Yeah, make them more rare. Yeah, I'd quite like a GT86.
Okay.
I do. Would that be my first choice? Probably. Mainly because I would stick with Japanese. I wouldn't go Euro just because in this country it's just too egregiously expensive to try and fix and find parts for. Not everyone works on them, and there's that inherent, I don't know, I get a bit shy with that sort of stuff because the Euro stuff, like the air of reliability, I think, is gone.
I don't know. I think some of the newer ones these days aren't too bad. I'd like to believe so. I feel like Mercedes turned a corner a few years back, but it's yet to be seen.
See, I look at Volkswagen and I note that there's this brand perception of it's a bit more classy, it's a bit nicer and stuff like that, and there's this air of quality or reliability or prestige, which it's all false.
I know.
They're not that reliable. Like, I mean, okay, they're reliable, but not that reliable.
See, I thought the Volkswagen Golf was the most quintessential reliable German auto car you can really think of.
Not anymore.
Okay. Well, I see a lot of people driving around in Golf R's.
Yes,
And
and they
cool.
make that stupid noise.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I live very close to someone who does that on the regular. Makes me upset.
If your car has that, no, just no.
How about the R32?
No.
Golfs.
I don't really like Volkswagens.
Oh, fair enough. Well, then don't get one.
No.
Because I did notice that none of us said $50,000 sports car, well, none of us said Euro cars.
No. I mean, that's the thing as well. Is like if we're talking about up to $50,000, you get a GT86 and some change
And some suspension mods.
and some wheels.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
And that's what I'm thinking. You make it look a bit more distinctive. It does blend in, yes, because there's a lot of them. But the fact of the matter is that you will be noticed if you want to be by, I don't know, a colour change or something like that.
Or some anime bottoms. As I saw the other day at Toyotas in the park.
Yep.
Jesus.
Or you'll have a car that's understand. Okay, it is one of those cars where I've seen quite a few different age groups drive it, and obviously with different states of what it looks like. It, obviously the younger people have the wheels and the graphics and the spoilers and the loud exhaust and stuff like that, whereas middle-aged people like who we know who has a GT86, it's completely standard.
And it looks good. It's looked after.
Yeah, and they're a good solid car, but you wouldn't have one.
If I was to have one, I'd keep it looking very standard and I'd put an Ellis in it. It would have to be a sleeper. That's the only way I'd own one.
Right.
Or I would have to go and drive one because I've never driven one. So I'm talking,
You've never driven one?
No, I'm talking from no experience here.
Do you know what it drives like?
Mods, what?
I'll tell you what it drives like. It drives like a standard S14.
I definitely don't want one. I had a standard S14 for years.
But isn't that funny though? Because when it came out,
Yes.
so many people were like, "Oh, it's only got this amount of power and stuff like that." Yeah, but the cars that everyone who was complaining about these cars, the cars that these people owned, started life with exactly the same sort of power and torque figures and stuff like that, but needed a turbo to achieve the same thing. Like all of those
That's a
SR20
very good
DET,
point.
because all right, it's only 200 horsepower, but how much power did a standard SR20 DET in an S14 or S15 make? It was the same amount.
About that, yeah. No, that's actually a fair call.
And
I did daily bulk stock S14 for years. And
look, you didn't hate it though, did you?
no, I quite liked it actually.
And this is what I mean.
And then it got silly, but
Yeah.
that was only after I broke it.
Yeah. But the thing is, you daily it, and you get the drivability, the manageability, the fuel economy, because they're generally pretty good standard. And it's the same with the GT86. I can't imagine that the guy that we know who owns it spends a lot of money on fuel.
Or maintenance.
Or maintenance.
So
Or anything, really.
That's a fair call. And I think if you don't do silly things with them, they're good cars.
And even tyres, I mean, it uses a fairly generic tyre size, 17 inch. It's not staggered. There's a lot of options for upgradability and stuff like that for them. So I think, for me, that's a good answer. Because I guess my sensible brain, part of my brain is saying, now, you've spent stupid money on cars before, let's not go down that road again, because then you have to do things and make compromises and stuff. So yeah, that's what I think anyway.
Yeah. Do you know what would really sell them to me?
What's that?
They made a convertible version.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
A convertible, but buy an MX-5. Seriously.
I would if they weren't stupid.
Well, MX-5s are good, man. I like MX-5s.
Not a stupid price.
Oh, yeah, new ones.
I mean, even the old ones. My friend bought a crashed NB the other day. NB, like clean paint.
That's right, you were telling
And
me
I
about
thought,
this, yeah.
it's not too bad. $12,000. It was pretty standard when they got it. $12,000. Ks weren't too high. It was like 140,000 Ks. Then you pop the bonnet, looked inside. The rad's all being pulled out. It's a Blair special. And by that I mean not very well. It's like what I'd be doing if I'd crashed my car and I just hooked the block and tackle up against a tree, reversed it out, give it the old tap, replace the headlight, replace the bumper, call it a day. And that's exactly what it is. $12,000. That's a yellow sticker waiting to happen.
Well, see, that's the thing though, that car was $7,500 about 5 years ago.
It wouldn't mean with the crash damage.
Actually, no, maybe $5,000.
Exactly.
Well, the car, and we might see him in a future episode maybe, he likes MX-5s. The second one he bought, which is an NB Series 2, which is 2001, I think it is.
And that's
the silver one that now has the different engine in it. We won't go into that. But yeah, when he bought that car, it was like just over $7,000, and it was standard, and it didn't have a huge amount of Ks, and it was in good condition, and it had no crash damage.
It was clean.
It was a clean
It
car.
was a good base.
But now that same car is $15,000 for some reason. All like everything else.
Exactly. Anyway, it baffles me.
But MX-5s, I mean, that's the thing though, isn't it? Like, that's the answer where if someone says, I want a convertible, MX-5.
True.
Doesn't matter which one, just MX-5.
But hear me out. I mean, imagine 86 with either a Targa top or convertible.
I don't know.
Well, they did the Zeds, that was popular. Did the Silvias, that wasn't popular.
I'm gonna, and I apologise, because a lot of opinions and things like that are formulated from hearing other people talk about this subject, and I just agree with them. But I think that any car that's a convertible should have started as a convertible in the first place, not been turned into a convertible. So if you take, for example, the 350Z,
Yep.
it's a hard top, and then they went zzz and took the roof off. Worse.
Not saying it was a sports car. I'm just saying for a nice cruiser with a bit of engine power, would have been comfortable.
Yeah.
Would have been nice, and I think that'd be a good car.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't be able to use it for something it's not, and it wouldn't be a track car anymore.
Oh, no.
So it would just be a comfortable cruiser.
Yep.
I mean, people might try and prove me wrong, and you could put all the bar work in the world, and then I've seen people drift them. But you have to put more effort into a convertible than a coupe to make it track worthy.
Far more. I mean, for what you lose in terms of weight for the roof, you're putting back in for stiffening and stuff like that. And it's not worth it.
They made a convertible version of these.
They made a convertible version of those, and
I think
they make me uncomfortable when I look at them because it's weird.
Delightful. They've got the little humps. They've nailed the body ratio lines. For me, that's about right.
Yeah.
No, fair call.
I'm a fan of convertibles when they are convertibles from the very start. So I like the MX-5, like the S2000, like things like, I suppose, the Lotus Elise and things, you know?
Yeah.
Where, I suppose, well, the Lotus Elise, there's a series of cars of which some are Targa top or convertibles and some are hard tops or whatever, but the Elise was always meant to be a car where the roof comes off.
So by that argument then, if you take a car that was convertible from factory, and then they make a coupe version, like say the MX-5, there was a few, is it a better car?
The NB Coupe?
Yeah, better
I
car.
actually really like those.
Me too.
Yeah,
Like
I would have one of those.
It's like a mini Silvia.
It's
gorgeous. No,
Like-
but is it a better car than the convertible?
I would argue that it appeals more to me
Mm.
because I'm not pretty enough to drive a convertible.
You just don't like getting the wind in your hair.
What hair? No, convertible. They're so. I mean, okay. One would argue that in Australia we have the weather for it, we have the climate for it, etc., etc. But the fact of the matter is that 10 minutes in the sun, you look like a beetroot, as you've noted recently
I
in
can
your
attest to
travels.
that.
Yep, and you end up not putting the top down nearly as much as you would think you would having a convertible.
I reckon the most you put the top down in that car would be in the first month of owning it.
Yeah.
And then after that point, you'd be like,
Well, actually, it is funny you mention that because I did have one of our friends who had an MX-5. He no longer has an MX-5.
Mm.
He had me run his car in, so I was just driving around, put Ks on it. He was away somewhere, I think, so I had the car and I was driving around sort of every day or whatever. I wasn't driving it that often with the top down, but at night it's amazing.
I can see that.
On a nice night, a convertible is fantastic because you got all of the stars and everything. There's all the lights. You can see everything around you, and you've got a nice cool breeze, and it's beautiful. I love it. That would be what I'd probably have a convertible the most, is that I would drive it at night time, have the top down, and just enjoy the fresh air.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because it's just, you get roasted during the day, and before you know it, you're sunburnt, you got skin cancer, and then you die. So we don't want that.
And you have to pass the car on to your kids, and we haven't got kids, so
No,
then what?
no. Well, I think that's probably it, man.
No worries.
Yeah, that's enough.
I think we've done alright.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. Well, thank you very much for tuning in, everyone. This will be back at some point soon. Like, share, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. And thank you, Blair, for joining me.
No worries. Don't forget to buy our merch.
Yeah. What?
We'll find some merch.
Maybe. I'll sell you some hat that I bought in Kmart or something like that.
Yeah, we'll
No.
resell something.
I'll give you this t-shirt. No. Get this shit off my back. There's going to be none of that.
I've
So,
got
yeah.
a lot of old Mercedes parts.
Oh, yeah. Well, we could probably share some ads for some of his old Mercedes parts in the script. Just, yeah, check
We'll move on.
check the socials. All right. Thank you again, and we will catch you next time. See ya.